that's congregating actually by our news van, which has been here all morning. But they are just standing up and standing out for everything that has been going on right now. Do you need me to carry that, Gus? Are you all right? Okay, Gus is okay. If we can look over a little bit there to the right-hand side, you can see a little bit more of that tear gas that is coming down. This is Temple and Main Street. We got a lot of flashbangs, bangs. We've got a lot more of that gas in the air, and a lot of people are going to start running because it is rather strong. The sheriff's department is over there still throwing stuff. I don't know if we can zoom in and see that. So what we have is, again, the National Guard, which is on the east side of Temple. We have the Sheriff's Department here, and then the Los Angeles Police Department guarding the City Hall, both the west and the north sides here of these multiple buildings. And in between this street is the gathering of demonstrators. They may have been here at 8 a.m. They may have come later. I'm not sure. But I do want to reiterate that for the most part today, it was very, very peaceful. All of this just started off about 45 minutes ago. I am gathering a little bit more of my bearings now after we did experience that tear gas out here, but certainly something that has just really sort of exploded literally and figuratively in the last hour or so since we've been out here, guys. But I just want to say it again. 25,000 people came down here around 9 a.m. this morning, and they demonstrated very, very peacefully, and hopefully we'll give you a chance to see some of that video and what brought them down here later on in the show when a lot of this sort of calms down.
Yeah, you were speaking to so many people that were out there today, Joy, and it remained so peaceful when you're talking about a group of 25,000 people. In your opinion, from where you're standing, what changed? Was it just a small group of people that started agitating the situation?
Yes, it's definitely a small group. It is not obviously the large 25,000 strong that we saw earlier today that we spoke to, who shared their concerns about everything that's going on here in Los Angeles, not only with immigration, but the loss of the state rights while they're seeing the military here in their community. That's very upsetting, not only visually, but in a concept altogether, when you're talking about a party that's known for state rights and then feels like they're not paying attention to the rights of this state and the people in this state. So again, 25,000 people. We've been here since 8:30 this morning, and they were peaceful and they were chanting, and we had folks doing orange juice on the side of the road and a lot of music, and it was more of a festival feel. And then just in the last hour, people have shown up. I can't tell you if they were here for the actual protest at 10 a.m., at 9 a.m., or if they have just started to show up. But this group is definitely a lot more agitated and appears to be a lot younger. We definitely had a different generation that was out here, residual tear gas, that was out here several hours ago than we have right now. But being young, part of that is being passionate, and they don't always express it in the most understandable way, but that doesn't mean their passion and their frustration isn't concerning and certainly worth listening to here in this community. So we don't know, right? We don't know how many of these people were here earlier and how many just showed up to do this, as we are getting close to that 8 o'clock hour where there is supposed to be a curfew, and they want to make sure that they can let their voice or their actions be heard and seen in whatever way that they want to.
Yeah, and Joy, I'm watching these people walk back to the intersection where we were seeing a lot of that action just moments ago take place, where the tear gas was deployed. Is law enforcement moving back, or are they pushing towards law enforcement?
They're not. So the group is pushing towards law enforcement, and I want to get a little bit, if you can see this. A few minutes ago, before the tear gas, you had the LAPD that was lined up on the right-hand side here. Can you show them that, Gus? Oh, I'll show you the booms, the bangs and the booms, because that's why people are tuning in right now. So you can see the green there, the green smoke. That is the tear gas. That's the stuff that's going to sting your eyes, and it smells like you're inhaling like a gajillion peppers. That's what it smells like, and that's what it tastes like, and nobody wants to be close to it. Yes, the yellowish green there is coming this way, and so as it starts to come this way, you'll see this group, and a lot of them aren't really being agitators. They're just being looky-loos because they want to see what's going on and they want to show it to you. Oh, but here it comes. It's going to be oh so much fun. And you can see the group that is dispersing right now and the ones that are running and still waving the flags. And you can see the ones that are really the agitators are coming in with the gas masks on. And we got our guy with the American flag and the boogie boards who seems to be having a blast right now. They have tried to shoot him with those rubber bullets several times, and he keeps deflecting them as they want him to go, and they want this crowd to stay back and get away from this corner because they're now starting to come in from 3 different directions. But again, you have the sheriff's department, you have the police department, and you also have the National Guard if you go a little bit further down to where Zach was, closer to the federal building. But yeah, they're pushing them back, and then they move forward, and then they push them back, and they move forward. And so is the dance that we do when we have a protest like this one. This is not the first time we have seen something like this in downtown Los Angeles, and I dare say it will not be the last. But it is something that, unfortunately, those of us in this particular industry have gotten used to, as we've seen it time and time again, especially this week.
Certainly. Joy Benedict live down there, Temple and Main, just a couple steps away from City Hall as we keep an eye on your live shot there. We'll let you gather yourself for a few minutes, check back in a second. And KCAL on the right side of your screen as well, a bit of a wider bird's eye picture of what's going on down there. But it's important context provided there by Joy in terms of being there from 8:30 in the morning, seeing thousands of people and tens of thousands, going over 20,000 people, mostly peacefully protesting. And now you see a much smaller number and a smaller group sort of agitating law enforcement to enough of a degree to have that dispersal order, that declaration of an unlawful assembly, and then maintaining our eye on this because it is certainly visual. It is certainly part of what we are monitoring for you, but it is not the full picture of what's been going on today in particular. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to speak to the fact that these streets earlier today, if you had monitored this downtown LA protest, they were packed with people. You could not make out a space of roadway earlier. So we are talking much less people, a much larger group. I believe that protest maybe ended around 3 p.m. But people, obviously, with that amount of people coming to downtown, there are going to be people that stick around. There are going to be people that linger. And this is definitely a much smaller group. But as Joy had mentioned, it took one gentleman, and I'm not going to say he started it all, but it was one gentleman that felt like was really facing off with law enforcement for so long. And
that push and pull between using the gas, smoke, rubber bullets, et cetera. We saw sheriff's deputies, we saw LAPD. You see the mounted unit just at the bottom of your screen. It's just below the lower third there on your screen right now. But on that note, I want to get back to Mark Liu at the desk. Mark, what are you keeping an eye on right now?
Well, we're listening to the radio traffic. It's coming in loud and clear down there. What you are seeing is elements of the LA County Sheriff's Department response team that is working in coordination with the LAPD. Those vehicles that you saw there just a moment ago with KCAL, those are pretty unique to see in the field. I spoke to LA County Sheriff's headquarters about them because here at the desk, we all kind of scratched our head when we saw them. We were not familiar with those pickup trucks that we saw deputies in the tactical gear there at the bottom of your screen. So I just spoke to LA County Sheriff's. Those are vehicles that are used to transport deputies out of LA County Sheriff's jurisdiction to assist other law enforcement agencies like the LAPD when they're in unified command. You usually don't see them actually at the front line. They're usually used for transport, but in this particular case, due for deputy safety and for visibility, they have them there in order to help deputies protect themselves as they move this skirmish line forward. Now, the second thing that we are hearing also from LA County Sheriff's deputies is this has sort of become a rolling dispersal order in the sense that it is not subject to just one group. They are using bullhorns down there to tell these protesters, this is an unlawful assembly. If you are standing in front of us now, you need to disperse. Now, this is video from just a short time ago of a woman that was taken into custody by LA County Sheriff's deputies. After you see up here, she made contact with one of their horses. Now, they dismounted, they were able to get her into custody, and they took her back towards those vehicles. It didn't appear that she had any injuries and no other deputies were injured either, but, making contact with sheriff's deputies' horses or any law enforcement horse is considered, it could be considered assault on an officer, so they take that very seriously as well. You can see there she's walking away under her own power. So it's unclear what kind of charge she may be facing, but it is clearly stemming from the contact that she made with that sheriff's deputy, that mounted sheriff's deputy. Now, back on the left side of your screen, we continue to see live pictures from KCAL at the various places around City Hall that we continue to see protesters a little bit further back from that skirmish line, but that skirmish line continues to try and push protesters to the west. As I had mentioned before, there was that main group where Joy Benedict was doing her live reporting from. That was at Temple and Main, I believe. That group broke up into two groups, one that went south, being monitored by the LAPD, and then this group here we see, which is a lot more violent, that is being dealt with by LA County Sheriff's deputies as part of that Sheriff's Response Team and Unified Command.
Yeah, and this is, something that law enforcement has been speaking about not only for days, as we have seen protests throughout downtown LA, mostly near the federal building, near City Hall. Many of these protests, that's where they have been centered. But we just heard from the mayor this morning. We heard from LAPD, the Sheriff's Department. I know I drove through the 101 coming into work, and CHP has the entire 101 entrance exit points through downtown completely blocked off. But this is something that they have been preparing for. And really throughout the day, we were hearing from Unified Command saying, we're not having any issues with protesters. I think their biggest issue was there's just so many people. We couldn't get to people that needed medical help if they needed it. But even then, we haven't heard of, injuries related to the protests necessarily. But right around 4 o'clock, 4:30, things taking a turn when a much smaller group continues to linger in the downtown LA area. And that protest has now ended officially.
And law enforcement reiterating, going back to this morning and really for about a week now, about how they will not tolerate violence or anything of the matter right now. As you continue to take a live look at this. On that note, let's get to our Tom Wade, who's one of our crews out there in downtown. Tom, can you hear us? And can you tell us where you are, what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's pretty intense right now. There is tear gas being fired, tear gas canisters. We're moving back up Temple right now. You can see that all on the screen right now. This all just very, very rapid developments right now. We're just standing here and everything seemed pretty, you could hear the action going on to our east, but it was not as intense as it was. Literally in a few seconds, everything changed. They started firing the tear gas canisters, and everything just changed in a hot second. They are definitely trying to disperse this crowd, and people just went running, and some people were just walking quickly. They set those off, and that really just changed the entire vibe. It was, like I said, I was kind of up and away from City Hall, like Temple, right next door to the courthouse, and I could hear and see some of the action that was going on with Joy and Zach, but it was a distance away, it felt like, and then all of a sudden the flashbangs went off, the pepper spray, tear gas, whatever you want to call it. That's when they deployed that, and everyone just kind of scattered. So now here we are, kind of back up the street. We're close to North Broadway right now. We're on Temple, right near between Spring and North Broadway, and they sort of cleared the scene, but now people seem to be kind of moved back. All right, we have a lot of intense emotions right now, right? A lot of emotions running high. I'm kind of waiting to see if I can. I haven't felt any of the pepper spray or the tear gas come up. Usually, when there's a breeze, it wafts up, but I think the wind is blowing in the opposite direction. Thankfully for us, so yeah, it does feel like it's kind of blowing it away from us and down to the east. So that's kind of making it a little bit easier to breathe. I guess now we're just in this holding pattern, and they're sort of methodically, when I say they, police, trying to get everyone out of here, and it seems like there's a much more calm atmosphere now. People are more methodically and kind of more relaxed walking out of the area. Definitely a big change from that. Very sudden just surge of activity when the canisters were set off and the crowd dispersed. I see more police moving through the area, so it'll be interesting to see now what they do, because there's people in the streets still, and this is an area where I believe that they've declared an unlawful assembly. So right now it's just kind of a holding pattern. I think there's some people who have left, and you probably hear some chanting behind me. I haven't seen any confrontations directly between protesters and police from where I'm standing, but you can see the distance there. Okay, go back to you guys.
Tom Wade down live in downtown LA right now. Tom, I'll circle back to you. We want to ask you something a little bit later on, but we'll let you gather yourself for a moment because we want to get to Zach Boetto, who is just south of City Hall.
Not
Zach,
too far from where Tom is.
Yeah, not too far from where Tom is. But Zach, we see the mask on, or what are you seeing right now?
Hey, Gio, we're at City Hall East here, and you talked about those two groups that have split up to Main and Temple. That's one of those groups here. You can see the sheriff's deputies right here talking. These deputies were shooting pepper balls and tear gas into the crowd there. That's one group. And then here to the left is Main and First. This is that second group you talked about, just south of City Hall here as well. And we are in this little staging area right here where some of the media has gathered to be able to be in between. But there's tear gas in the air right now circling. That's why I have the mask on. That's why we have the goggles on. You can see the ralliers and the protesters continuing to approach. As soon as they approach, deputies firing those pepper balls here to our right and pushing them back, pushing them back. Seems like they're trying to hold them right at this line, this south side entrance to Los Angeles City Hall here. And again, deputies then shooting at these protesters who look like they're trying to get from one group to the other. You can see them going to this group here on Main and Temple. But, you know, like we've been talking about over the last, since the top of the hour here, the last 18 minutes, things have definitely escalated. And it's been tear gas, it's been flashbangs. There goes another one. And it's been pepper balls to try to separate these groups that gathered here at the Los Angeles City Hall. So we're seeing a lot of protesters, they get pushed back and they come back to the line. As we said all week and last weekend, you know, these protests, they tend to ebb and flow. So the protesters get pushed back and then they come back on the line. And as soon as they start to make their way back and deputies feel like they've crossed the line, that's when deputies will then, you know, fire those pepper balls and tear gas to, again, try to push them back. But we're seeing really hundreds of people here in this group off of Main and First here to our left. They've got the signs, they've got the flags, they've got all the PPE that you can think of, masks, goggles, and they're here to protest. But again, things turn from that peaceful protest earlier now to a much more action-packed protest and clash between law enforcement and protesters here outside of Los Angeles City Hall. So we're going to continue to, of course, follow what's going on here. We are in a safe zone here between the two groups, but we are seeing now two separate groups split up here outside of LA City Hall, and deputies try to keep them back off of their skirmish lines while we continue, of course, these protests that are all surrounded this No King's Day, and from last weekend was those ICE raid protests. And we're seeing a culmination of those two things now here in June, and it's become this pretty serious clash that we're seeing here in downtown LA, guys.
Zach, before we let you go here, LAPD had put out that some of the protesters were throwing things like objects at them. Are you seeing that currently happening right now?
Yeah, the protesters are throwing things back at deputies, and what's happening also is deputies are shooting tear gas into the crowd, and some protesters are quick enough and are wearing gloves, and they're grabbing the tear gas canisters and throwing them back at the deputies. So that's when you see a lot of those tear gas canisters right next to deputies. You're wondering how they can get so close. If they're the ones shooting them, protesters are picking them up and throwing them right back to where they're standing. Protesters also seeming to have glass bottles, which they're choosing to throw, and here comes more tear gas right here. We're seeing now also a large number of American flags that just popped up here in the area. We're seeing the American flags and the tear gas, quite a contrast right here.
Yeah, that large group looks to have moved in there. I know you guys are moving back here. We want to get to our Mark Lou, but I want to make a point here is that this has now been considered an unlawful assembly, and a dispersal order has now pretty much been ordered, which means that at this point, LAPD or law enforcement can use force because they want people to just leave the area. That's correct, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's exactly right. An unlawful assembly has been declared here. This means that the First Amendment concept of protesting here at this time does not apply because of either issues of violence or, like you said, people doing things that could potentially harm property or lives. I want to go out to Joy Benedict, though, right now. She is down there still near Temple. And Joy, tell us what you're seeing down there.
I mean, it's a little chaotic. I think that's given. A lot of banging going on behind me, as expected in a protest like this. But as you mentioned, yes, I am here at Temple and Main Street. We have a lot of agitators out here on the street. They are refusing to disperse despite the call to do so. And so what you're seeing is a lot of flashbangs. We got some tear gas. We got a few of those rubber bullets going at individuals that they are targeting as they are trying to get the crowd to move out of this area. This is right in between the main City Hall building and the bridge that goes to the East City Hall building, as you can see that and hear that, obviously. We're kind of a little bit back behind the front line, but of course that doesn't mean you can't hear things that are going on as we try to maneuver around our own news van. Clearly, we did not pick the best place to park at 8:30 this morning. But nonetheless, everything is going on right there in the crosswalk. If you can see that up there, you can see a lot of the smoke there. And now it's white smoke right now. The tear gas is going to be the yellow or the green smoke, so that's what you want to look out for. And that's when you'll likely see us heading the opposite directions. But
they attacked us.
They are trying to push everybody back. That's what they're trying to do. Yes, it's definitely a difficult situation. Yes, it's been very peaceful all day long. We should mention that until about 45 minutes or so ago.
Came in, they tear gassed everyone.
Oh, where were you when you guys were down at the federal building?
Right here on Spring, on Temple, all the way down in that center, right there under the bridge.
Okay, and you got here early this morning?
This morning was super. It's been peaceful the entire time. They came in with the horses, no warning. Tear gas everybody, flashbang everybody, rubber bulleted everybody. That's what started all of this.
And I hear it started with the National Guard sort of in that direction, or who did you see first?
It was all LAPD, all LAPD.
On the left. We got shot by this. We got shot this.
That's right.
One of the rubber bullets? Are you okay?
I'm okay, but we saw people get shot.
I saw a guy get hit right left here, right in the groin.
It was all peaceful.
Okay.
None of us was violent.
Yeah.
They started this.
No, I've been here since 8:30. It was very peaceful. We do want to make that very clear, and we have a lot of video of that as well.
Basketball. It was like a good vibe. Like,
it was a good vibe. There was a lot of music. It was kind of like a street party.
And when they decided to come in, they came in super, super hard and aggressive, and that's what's created all of this.
And you didn't get any sort of warning at all?
No warning. They just masked up.
How does this make you feel right now after you've spent all day here trying to express your opinion peacefully?
It's upsetting because how are people supposed to feel like their voices are being heard when they're being violently put down by the state itself? I mean, this is the whole point, right? It's like you can't give people parameters of protesting. It has to be uncomfortable for everybody. Nobody out here wants to be here.
Well, let me ask you before I go, what is it that you want? Why did you come out today?
I think everyone just wants an end of fascism in America right now, and you know, the end of the order that's been creating this since the 60s, since the 50s, since the 30s, right? I mean, every movement that we've ever gotten something out of has happened from this. So this is an important part of the American identity, and I think everyone here just wants to see an equal and free America.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your opinion with us, and of course for being out here. And you're going to hear a lot of that passion from a lot of folks who are out here as we continue to watch everything literally explode right in front of the Los Angeles City Hall, guys. It's just been a very peaceful day that is certainly anything but at this particular hour. I'll send it.
Yeah, Joy, of course, your safety, Gus's safety as well is a priority. So, you know, get yourself in a situation where you feel comfortable and safe. We'll check back in a little bit later on. I mean, you saw the crowd there. We've been talking about ebbs and flows, even going back to last week. And every time you see LAPD or sheriff's deputies, law enforcement push a group out, it almost seems like all of a sudden then, at least from the ground perspective, even more people start coming in once things start to settle down, and then it escalates again and then coming back down. Taking a live look from SkyCal right now, this is sort of a remnant of one particular group walking down the street. I want to bring Mark Liu back in from the desk there. Mark, what are we keeping an eye on for?
Well, you know, I continue to monitor traffic from both the LA County Sheriffs and the LAPD down there. This has sort of settled into a fairly stable situation in terms of movement. Now, it's certainly unstable in terms of the violence that we're seeing down there. We're seeing, of course, like tear gas that we had seen. We'd seen some people throwing things. But in terms of the location, we've seen much less movement in terms of the dispersal of people. So I want to bring you out to my map on my screen if I can and show you. This is a map of downtown LA, and I'm going to zoom in to the primary area where all of this is happening. Now, the landmark that I want you to focus on right here, this is City Hall. And what we are seeing is action primarily right here at the intersections of Spring, Main, and Los Angeles. Now, Joy Benedict was reporting from right about here, Zach Bodo right about here, and Tom Waite is over in this area. But the primary concern right here, elements of LA County sheriffs are engaging with the protesters right there. That skirmish line that we saw, it's right here. The protesters are in this area. There was also a group that I said earlier had gone this direction and down towards Alameda. The LAPD was managing that. But there is also action where Zach is right here and, of course, right in front of LA City Hall as well. So, again, this primary location right there at the location of Temple and Main is where we are seeing all of that action. The other thing that I want to note here as I clear the screens off of my map, the 101 is also an issue of concern. We are seeing elements of LAPD monitor the areas here, 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 and here, because they don't want people going on the freeway. I want to send it right back out now to Zach Boedo, who is down there near City Hall. Zach, what can you tell us what's going on down there on City Hall East?
Guys, we are getting hit with some tear gas right now as we speak. It's coming our way. We had some protesters.
The protesters who were here at Temple in Maine started to come at us and behind deputies who were shooting projectiles over at this group here on Main and First. And so then they decided to really start to try to clear everybody from this group from Temple and Main back that direction, which is north. Some of these sheriff's deputies here, you can see from our vantage point right over the shoulders of the sheriff's deputies and protesters trying to egg them on and get them to do stuff. You can see the protesters with umbrellas. They're using those umbrellas as basically shields to try to block the tear gas canisters or those pepper bullets that are being shot out. But now you can also see the two groups kind of starting to go back and forth. People are able to go back and forth almost as they please. When they started to go in larger numbers, that's when deputies start to shoot those tear gas canisters. Now, looking back over here at Temple and Main, we're seeing a lot of protesters start to approach the intersection here. Usually, right around this type of crowd here is when we start to see the tear gas and the pepper bullets and the flashbangs to try to disperse who's gathering up to this skirmish line that you can see over here on the right. We got deputies on top of these sheriff vehicles that have the bars that are on top of them. They're using those as a method to kind of get a visual at the protesters over the skirmish line. But again, as we see the protesters start to pour into this intersection of Main and Temple, this is what it starts to look like right before law enforcement will start to shoot off whether it's tear gas or flashbangs to try to get these groups to disperse. And now let's look back over at the other group over here on our left. Again, starting to crowd up. You can see there's a lot of media up front, up close, trying to get photos of those protesters who are on the front lines, who have been kind of taking those tear gas canisters and those pepper bullets from deputies and basically shaking it off and continuing to push forward toward deputies who are stationed here at East City Hall, as you guys mentioned. So still, an intense situation here outside of Los Angeles City Hall, but we're in one of those moments of lull where there's where you're not hearing any bangs, you're not seeing any flashes, but still over here we're seeing congregations of protesters and deputies who are seeming to be ready to jump into action as soon as they're ready to. You can see here now deputies seemingly preparing to go on an offensive here, and like I said, push these protesters back who are here at Temple and Main. I would not call this a peaceful protest at this point, guys. You mentioned earlier that it was very peaceful here now at 5:30 on Saturday evening here in Los Angeles. These protests are not peaceful. We have tear gas, we have pepper bullets, we have flashbangs, and we have people who are getting seriously hurt. You can see a young man who looks like he is with media, maybe. He's got a mask. He's squinting his eyes. He took some serious tear gas. It's surprising to see this many people still sticking around because of the amount of tear gas that's in the air, the amount of pepper bullets and flashbangs that are being fired by deputies. It seems like a normal family would get out as soon as they hear a flashbang explode right at the intersection they're standing. But these protesters not backing down, and you can see on the ground in this area the debris that has been left behind. Right here I have what looks like a less than lethal ammunition that deputies were using to fire at protesters. It's like a spongy to the touch here, and it won't hurt, but it might be enough to push you back. So guys, we're going to send it back to you in the studio. Again, a very active scene still here in Los Angeles.
And Zach, before we let you go, as we take a live look from SkyCal on the right side of your screen, you see those sheriff's deputies establishing that skirmish line. I know you mentioned that it doesn't look like a peaceful protest right now. We've seen the flags, we've seen the signs, as well as the tear gas and every other form of dispersal to try and get the crowds out. But have you been hearing protesters like yell at law enforcement or otherwise instigate any sort of actions? I'm curious as to how you would describe how else protesters and people gathering down there are acting from your vantage point.
There's been a lot of profanity being yelled at law enforcement. We're hearing over the speaker here to my left that it sounds like they just declared an unlawful assembly here in downtown LA. And so people are now starting to leave in droves. So I don't know if it was the unlawful assembly that was ruled that is now making people leave, but this is the most action that I've seen without shooting tear gas or pepper bullets or flashbangs to get people move today. It sounds like this unlawful assembly is getting people to move away from this intersection of Temple and Main, and so it might be the threat of being arrested, which is finally getting people to move away from City Hall after an intense No King's Day protest here in downtown LA, guys.
Yeah, you know, you're watching that group just basically run the other direction. Zach Boetto, thank you so much. But I think we need to remember, once that unlawful assembly is declared, as Mark told us, First Amendment really goes out the door. That's when LAPD and law enforcement can use less than lethal, can use the tear gas, because this has been declared an unlawful assembly there. I want to get to Tom Waite. Tom, let us know the location you're at. And then we're seeing a lot of police presence moving in here.
Yeah, so Leslie, I'm just going to jump in here. A lot has just happened in the last few seconds. So at Temple and Broadway, and all of a sudden, a convoy of police vans just showed up, and a small army of officers jumped out, and they are now swarming the streets here in this area. They went down kind of close to the area of City Hall, and they are just, sort of blanketing the area. I can hear bangs. I see smoke. I don't know if that's just smoke or, sometimes that's a device they use just to clear the area, or if that's actually pepper spray. But I just saw a bunch of officers with zip ties and less than lethal weapons jump out of their vans and just swarming this area. All of the vehicles arriving here just the past few seconds. So now it'll be interesting to see what's the operation here. What are they doing? So they are obviously, with an unlawful assembly, they are trying to clear the crowd out as much as possible. Just where I was standing as the police were rolling in, someone threw a rock at one of the police cars. The police showing pretty good restraint, and as far as I can tell, the officer didn't pursue this person, and the person basically didn't run away. He had a mask over his face, and he just walked off. And officers just kind of kept their focus on what their apparent mission is right now, which is to clear this area around City Hall and around down toward the east there to the federal complex. They are adding more and more officers as we speak. I can hear more sirens coming to our area. You can hear them blaring. Here they're coming. It's like a convoy here. I think some people are starting to get the message that have been lingering. They're trying to move their cars, but man, they are coming fast and furious right now. Here's another round. Here they come. And this guy's gonna get knocked if he doesn't be careful. But they are absolutely in a pretty organized operation mode here. You can tell that they had personnel and people ready to go on the ground, and they're moving quickly. They're swarming the area.
Yeah, Tom, I want to ask you something. If we can, I want to be able to put up KCAL just a brief moment as we keep talking to Tom here, because there was someone in a vehicle, seemingly unattended, and kind of waving a wheelchair up in the...
I believe he was at kind of the skirmish line where police were for quite some time, and he might have gotten in his own vehicle there and is now leaving the area. But yeah, he was in a wheelchair, and it looked like he was a part of the protest, now leaving that area.
It was an interesting sight, to say the least. But Tom, I think it's worth going back to your point there about seeing that convoy of vans, of officers, of law enforcement making their way. I'm curious from your perspective as to the number of protesters, because as we start approaching the evening hours, as we've seen in the last week or so, is that once the numbers game starts to tilt toward law enforcement, that's when we start seeing the ramp up of really pushing crowds out once law enforcement feels like they have an upper hand in terms of more of us versus more protesters. And then we start seeing detainments, then we start seeing arrests. I'm curious if you see a significantly larger number of law enforcement versus protesters from where you are right now.
Yeah, I mean, from where I am right now, definitely. Most of the people that were here when I arrived have gone, but I'm a bit to the west of where the highest concentration of people are. So where I am right now, you can see they're lining up. They're kind of staging from where I am. This is where they're sending all their personnel, it looks like, or at least, I mean, there could be several different angles that they're coming at this from. In fact, there are. I can see more officers down in the distance. That angle you're looking at right now is more toward the City Hall area, which the shot you're looking at. And so what they're doing is, it looks like they're lining up here, and I'm imagining in other locations as well, and then they're sending in these large large groups of officers. And basically what they do is they send them in. It's kind of like a shock and awe type of situation where they flood the zone. They get they barrel in fast. They kind of startle the crowd. People, it scares people. It's startling. So then they disperse sometimes, and they just keep doing this and doing it. It's kind of like it sort of wears people out. Now, of course, there's always going to be people that stick around, and sometimes they're here to just be agitators and not really here to protest. And that's what we've seen in a number of times over the last few nights that I've been down here downtown. So now, Anna, there's they're moving in right there. You can see the police are now running down into the area, and of course, the idea, I'm sure, for them is to do this in large numbers. It's to show force, but not use force necessarily, but to create the the perception that when you see these officers in riot gear and coming in and making their presence known. Just one other note here, and we've said this over the course of our coverage, but it's interesting coming into downtown because it besides this, I don't know how many blocks it is, 5-6 block area, maybe a little bit larger, smaller, give or take. Downtown is quiet. There's nothing really. I mean, it's all of this that I can tell is all taking place around City Hall and near the Federal Building, which is all kind of in the same spot. If you go to any other part of downtown right now, it's generally like business as usual. You wouldn't even know that there are protests and some of these clashes that are playing out here in downtown LA.
Yeah, if you're near LA Live, you would have no idea this was happening. Even driving down the 101, I could not make out the amount of people that were still on the street because the roadways are so clear. Although you do see the show of force as they have all the entrance and exits blocked off there. But Tom, I was just reading from LAPD that they're saying that some people may be throwing commercial grade fireworks at officers, throwing bottles at officers. Are you seeing any of that from your vantage point?
So when I was standing here about 5 minutes ago, there was a man in a mask who threw a rock at a police cruiser. The officer driving it did not even react. He got out of his car's SUV and proceeded down to the east to the area where a lot of these protesters are still in a crowd. That's the only one I've seen over the course of the past 2 days covering this in the early Monday and Tuesday night, and also back on Friday when this all began a week ago Friday. I did see people firing fireworks at the officers and throwing other projectiles, but at this moment that was one person that did it, and then that's all I've seen from this vantage point. But I am a little bit further back, so I think some of the other protesters down, further away, there could be other stuff playing out there. What sort of boggles my mind is there's still people driving down into this area, and it's completely congested and kind of locked down. So I'm surprised that I don't know if some people are just like caught up in not knowing this is happening. Like I said, you could be 2 blocks away from here and have no idea this is even happening. Because when we came off the freeway, it was, I could see a bunch of action going on down. I think you can probably see down there to our east. They're flooding the zone over there. I don't know if one of our other cameras has a better shot of that, but it looks like there's a huge show of force there from, and we're showing it to you here, but bunch of police officers down there, and I just heard another banging sound, and I don't know where it came from. But yeah, this block right here is a pretty good vantage point, but it's also much more quiet up here. There's obviously people honking their horns and that, but quiet in terms of there's no real confrontation here. It looks like police are focusing a lot of that down now. They've moved people out, and they're sort of more to the east of where we are. Like I said, we're on Temple right now, just to the east of North Broadway.
Tom Wade down there live. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate that, and getting to see that perspective of really crowded traffic, not to mention an overload of officers, really.
Oh, yeah. It feels like that entire intersection, right, is just officers at this point. Besides, what is pretty surprising is how many cars are still driving in that area.
Yeah.
Law enforcement has said, try to stay away. Well, they're saying stay away from the Civic Center area of downtown LA, and that's pretty much just City Hall, the federal building, and right around there.
Exactly. It goes back to your point and Tom's point as well about the fact that you could be a couple blocks away and not even know that this is going on because it's so heavily concentrated in just a little bit. But on that note, in terms of contrast, we want to get back out to our Zach Boetto, who is near City Hall, because from Tom's perspective, Zach, we were seeing a lot of officers. From your perspective earlier, it was a lot of protesters, but now it looks like there might be a movement of officers behind you. Describe the scene for us.
Well, Gio, lots of Los Angeles Metro Police now moving down Main Street toward First. You can see them right behind Los Angeles City Hall. They are moving by the dozens here down Main Street, going west. It looks like officers with weapons. You have officers here on top of their horses. Again, these are Los Angeles Metro Police officers who are now taking over Main Street between Temple and First. It sounds like over on Spring Street there are more flashbangs going off, but if you can step this way, on top of the right here, step to your right, talking to Assad, our photographer here, you can see that officers are pushing toward protesters there near First Street. They're really trying to get them off of Main here and back towards First Street. But this street over the last 15 minutes was pretty much taken over by protesters. Now Los Angeles Metro Police pushing back. It's looking like they're pushing them all the way back to First. We just saw Joy Benedict. She was all the way up here where we are at Main and Temple, and she is a part of that group that just went that way. So you might be able to see from her vantage point what's happening in that direction, guys. But it's clearing up over here at Temple and Main.
A big show of force from the LAPD there on the ground. As you can see, officers pretty much just sweep this entire area that you made note of, Gio. Earlier when we spoke to Zach, it was a lot of protesters, and now you can see LAPD's mounted unit is out there. They have that show of force of officers, and they're quickly pushing this crowd back.
Yeah. And speaking of, we want to highlight that contrast once again. We get back out to our Joy Benedict. Joy, earlier you were talking to a couple protesters who were there, and they were saying that they started this. They were blaming law enforcement, that they got no warning. I mean, where are you right now? It looks like you're in the van, but who have you been talking to, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, we are in the van because if you look in front of us, you were just talking about where Zach was. And so, see, they pushed all the horses here. We didn't have anywhere to go, so we just jumped in our van and watched the horses in the crowd move past us. But it looks like we can get out of the van now. But we just had a little bit of a crunch moment. So you can see we still have, it appears to be LAPD there in the blue. That's moving out. And if we open up the van, you'll see that now the horses and all of the command is actually over here behind us. Sorry, we're obviously moving and live on TV at the same time. So you see now the horses are on the other side of us, and we were rolling as they kind of surrounded our car and kept going that way as they're trying to push the crowd. Now that is towards the Los Angeles Police Department. So they have now moved them from the federal building past Temple down Main further as they're heading over there to First Street as they're trying to get this crowd and specifically the agitators sort of corralled into an area or quite frankly pushed out of downtown altogether. But knowing what I do about downtown, they're not going to want to push them further too far in that direction because then they're going to hit a business district, and they of course don't want to send the agitators into the restaurant corridor and things of that nature. So I can bet that they're going to try and contain them at some point for those who continue not to disperse as they have been asked to do. But it has really just been going on for maybe about an hour and a half now that we've been seeing this sort of agitation and this exchange between law enforcement and the rebel rousers, so to speak. But as I have been reiterating for the last hour, I want to make sure you guys understand that we had like 8 hours of a very peaceful and very powerful protest. I think it's also important to mention because a lot of people keep thinking this is happening all over LA. It is not happening all over LA. It is happening right here in this downtown area where you're dealing with the federal building and City Hall, and unfortunately some of that has spilled into Little Tokyo, which is of course the closest neighborhood nearby. And when I was out there earlier today, every shop was boarded up. There were only about 2 places that were even open during the lunch hour because they didn't want to draw the crowds, and they were quite frankly afraid that this was going to happen and it was going to end up once again on their doorstep after a very tough week that many of the businesses here in this area have already had. But yes, so you can see the mounted unit, the LAPD, everybody is sort of moving in this direction, which is west towards more of the center of downtown. And that's why I caution, I can't imagine they're going to let this crowd get too far west, because then they're going to enter sort of another business district where there's a lot of restaurants and nightlife here in this community. But again, as we've been talking about, they did say this is an area of dispersal. We've got the chopper up. They're trying to get this crowd to do just that. They're trying to get them to simply disperse, and so hopefully they'll get the message, if not for the movement, but for all the activity and the horses to get them to get out of the way. I'll send it back to you guys.
Joy, thank you so much. I want to get to Mark Liu to give us some perspective because Joy made a good point here. They are moving this crowd west. If you keep going that way past First Street, you are going to hit a pretty busy business district with a lot of restaurants, a lot of shops. Do we think LAPD is staged on in the other direction as well? Are you seeing any of that? Or
yes, they are already concerned about groups to the south and to the west on 2nd Street, on Broadway, south of Grand Park. This is a concern. Now, what we're looking at here is the western side of City Hall. Joy is literally on almost exactly on the other side of City Hall. You see that bridge that connects the main building of City Hall to that large white building on the right side of your screen? That's City Hall East. Yeah. Joy and Zach are basically right there in that area. And that's where we have seen a large number of LAPD on mounted units moving that group to the south. That was a troublesome group for LAPD, and you can see they are now here on First Street and Main, where there are groups that are running through here. So what we are seeing is action on both sides of LA City Hall. It is much more intense here on the southeast side of City Hall as opposed to the western side. That's close to where Tom Waite was. And we saw that large group between City Hall and Grand Park. They appear to be much more peaceful than this group here, who is continuously being moved to the south by LAPD mounted units with the assistance of some LA County Sheriff's deputies that are behind them there. But it's unclear the final destination for LAPD as they continue to move to the south. There's a lot of downtown ahead of them. So they're hoping, I believe, LAPD listening to the radio traffic, it appears they are hoping that as this group continues to move south, they'll get further and further away from the point of origin where this unlawful assembly dispersal order was declared. And we have seen historically, as protesters move further and further away from where they originally were from, there's a much higher likelihood that they will disperse because protesters need to get back to their cars, they need to get back to their homes. So we will see these large chunks, these large groupings sort of move away and disperse. Now, this group here to the western side of City Hall has essentially been here since about 9:45 this morning. And what we are seeing here, Gio and Leslie, is perhaps the beginnings of almost the exact same thing we saw, I believe it was Monday night into Tuesday, where protesters last week grabbed large barricades, including large orange and red metal chairs from the Grant Park area, and placed them right there on Spring Street and barricaded the LAPD. This was almost exactly, I guess it was 6 days ago, 5 days ago, that we saw an identical skirmish line with protesters right here. There was tear gas deployed back then, too, as these protesters grabbed items from Grant Park. They were benches, they were metal barricades like we're seeing there, and set them up in almost the exact same place as we're seeing right here, right now. So we're going to keep monitoring this. There are several different groups moving around downtown, around City Hall, and here at the desk, I'm going to keep listening to the radio traffic. I'm going to come right back to you in just a second.
Mark, thank you. We even saw that going back to the weekend as well, as laying those barriers down.
And luckily, we're not seeing any of those pink benches. Not sure if they're still even at the Gloria Molina Grand Park anymore, but you are seeing that group. It's just 3 people take, these metal gates, push them forward, try to hide behind them. And that's the situation that once that dispersal order is called, law enforcement will really try to break up. But it was interesting, on the other side of City Hall, as Mark was talking, did you see how quickly law enforcement is moving
almost
in?
like a burst, they were coming right on through. Yep.
Yeah, it looked like some of those officers, they take the lead, they start to clear the intersection, and they are just running towards anyone in their direction, whether they move or not, to clear the next area to try to get them to push back.
And even this group right here, there is I hesitate almost to call it a healthy distance, but there is a distance between protesters and that row of law enforcement. Do we want to get back out to Zach Boetto right now? I know we were just about to check in with him. Zach's still down there live right now. Zach, last we checked, we saw officers sort of push through and get the crowd out. What are you seeing right now?
Hey guys, we're on Temple and Spring now. You can see roughly 100 Los Angeles Police Department officers standing firm here at Spring and Temple, trying to push protesters now west down Spring Street. You can see there's a lot of protesters now here clashing with police officers, which we didn't see. We didn't see a lot of police officers until about 10-15 minutes ago. They are now trying to clear this next wave of protesters down Spring Street. If you look to my right here, you can see those LA County Sheriff's deputies now have jumped on these sheriff pickup trucks, and they have also rolled up Temple Street, which is now completely filled with law enforcement all the way down past Main Street, right? So from Main to Spring, on Temple, we now have a bunch of law enforcement who are coming up and then trying to push protesters west down Spring Street, which is right in front of the Los Angeles City Hall. Also, if you look left here towards City Hall, you can see sheriff's deputies and standing guard right on City Hall, where we're pointing in this direction, kind of protecting City Hall there. And as you look a little bit to the right, you can see protesters pushing the line here, trying to get as close to officers and deputies as they can. But we're seeing, if we go back to the right, again, a large growth of law enforcement officers here at the corner of Temple and Spring, looking like they're going to make another push west on Spring to try to get protesters away from City Hall here, move them west and also move them north. But you can see the sheriff's deputy vehicles coming around and coming behind the Los Angeles police officers to kind of get their back, get their six, as they might say, and help them push from behind. Again, those deputies standing on top of the pickup trucks have a line of sight. Some of those deputies have those cannon-looking weapons that shoot, as we know, flashbangs and tear gas. And now we're hearing deputies come over the loudspeaker I can't necessarily pick up what they're saying, but they look like they're again moving. Guys, we're going to send it back to you.
It sounds like, from what I picked up, possibly saying it's an unlawful assembly there, that you have to clear that area. Now, Zach, I know yesterday you covered some of the Marines that were over in Westwood at that federal building. We're seeing a lot of LAPD sheriffs. We know you're not at the federal building there downtown, you're near City Hall, but have you seen any of the federal officials out there today?
We did see National Guard stationed right around the federal building, which is just down Temple Street here. But as we've moved up Temple, you can see here come more officers moving right behind us down Temple. As we've come up Temple, we haven't seen any National Guard here around City Hall. Again, we did see National Guard guardsmen standing around the federal building, but it looks like law enforcement is trying to push protesters away from that federal building up here towards City Hall. They've moved them, and now it looks like they're trying to move them away from City Hall. And right here you can see my photographer Assad here is picking up the line switch. It looks like LAPD is now falling back, and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is now stepping forward to form its own skirmish line here at Spring and Temple. They're obviously well protected. Helmets, visors, bulletproof vests on them. But you have now these two organizations working together, which, as you know, Mayor Karen Bass and Sheriff Robert Luna said they did not want to help with these federal sweeps that were taking place with the Department of Homeland Security, but they said they will protect the city if these protests turn violent. Mayor Karen Bass all day preaching, we want you to be able to peacefully protest here in the city. We want you to be able to express your First Amendment right, but we don't want this to turn violent. And here we go with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies who are on scene, who are helping to protect this area of downtown LA. And we also have the Los Angeles Police Department also helping the deputies do that same thing, guys.
Zach Boto live near City Hall down there. Zach, thank you. You really saw law enforcement seem to really beef up their operations in just the last really half hour. Even in just the last few minutes, you can really highlight all of that as an unlawful assembly you picked up there through the loudspeakers being declared in that area. So we're going to obviously continue to monitor the situation here. And on that note, we want to welcome in our CBS viewers back here as we approach the 6 o'clock hour. A lot going on in downtown LA following the aftermath of those No Kings protests, not just in Southern California, but across the country. Obviously, the majority of those protests, if not outright all of them, being mostly peaceful. We saw a lot of large crowds everywhere, including downtown LA, and now things have taken a bit of a turn as we continue to monitor the situation with LAPD, LA County Sheriff's deputies as well, sort of move out these crowds of people near City Hall after an unlawful assembly has been declared.
Yeah, right around 4:30, LAPD started declaring an unlawful assembly in certain areas of the Civic Center area of downtown. So this is largely concentrated near City Hall. What you're looking at right now, KCAL over City Hall, that is the entrance there, but you can see some people pushing back some of these metal barricades. We've seen law enforcement use not only flashbangs as well as tear gas and some of those less than lethal rounds to get this crowd back. It's a much smaller crowd earlier today, 25,000 people, if not more, but take a look. You're seeing some of that less than lethal being deployed there. I want to get to Mark Liu here. Mark, what are you hearing on the ground? This is a scene we've seen play out for the last maybe hour now, hour and a half.
Yeah, so we are basically, as you said, they're deploying some less than lethal rounds here, both with those flashbangs and tear gas. But our Zach Boedo is actually down there on the ground, and I want to go right to him. Zach, can you see what's happening there by City Hall?
Yeah, as we were talking about a few moments ago, guys, deputies have taken over here at Spring and Temple, and they are not here to mess around. They immediately held firm here at Temple and Spring, and now they've gotten their flashbangs out, and they're shooting them right at protesters who are here in front of City Hall, as the Los Angeles Police Department has now started to fall back. We still have some police officers right here on this line in this, dirt terrain with the plants here, but other than that, the police officers have fallen back. You can see sheriff's deputies, here we go again, throwing more less than lethals, going over the top of the protesters. You can see some of the protesters, this girl in the red dress here, who has her hands up. She really seemingly, she's crying and pleading with officers. She doesn't want to be involved in the violence, clearly, but there are other protesters who are masked up and who are welcoming these types of confrontations. Here go the deputies, tear gas. You can see the smoke actually coming back toward us, so we're downwind, not exactly where you want to be when these types of tear gas canisters go off, or these flashbangs. But you can see the protesters are starting to disperse, so this is what they feel like works. The flashbangs, the tear gas, and they are clearing protesters off of Spring Street, which is the street that runs right in front of Los Angeles City Hall, where we saw thousands of ralliers and protesters earlier today. But once this turned what you can consider non-peaceful, they're now trying to clear people out. An unlawful assembly has been declared, and they are trying to get people to disperse from outside of the Los Angeles City Hall. So again, we have dozens, if not hundreds, of Los Angeles Police Department officers here on scene, and also Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies working in unison to get these protesters back. It looks like there's a couple deputies down, maybe reloading, but the tear gas is coming right at us, guys. I got to throw my goggles and mask back on. We're going to send it back to you.
Zach Boedo live down there near City Hall. Zach, thank you. And seeing swift movement in that regard, trying to push the crowds out. Let's get over to Tom Waite.